Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Society of the Eternal Mile podcast. I'm your host, Noah Sias. On today's episode, we're joined by drummer and vocalist Kevyn Reece. You may know of Kevyn from his work in Oklahoma-based bands In Honor, Valleys, and Sledge. He also spent a brief period with the now-defunct band 2x4. Follow the show on social media at SOTEM Podcast. Subscribe wherever you listen. Feel free to write into the show on Facebook or leave a review on iTunes. And show your support on Patreon at patreon.com/SOTEM Podcast. Quick reminder on that Distinguisher, Castaway, and Born Anew tour. As of this episode today, which would be February 5th, that tour is in Sacramento, California at Holy Diver. That run has 6 more dates, so be sure to check on Facebook for the remaining dates. Stop on out to show your support, and don't forget to tell Josh that you heard him here on the podcast. And also, there's another show going on this evening. If you're out near the Gulf Coast, previous guest Bryce Ballinger of Witch Trial is hosting Era, The Arbitrary, Vagrants, and Crypt at Zeppelin's in Biloxi, Mississippi. You can head over to Witch Trial's Facebook page for more information on that. And if you happen to stop out there, be sure to say hey to Bryce and tell him that you heard him here on the podcast, episode 10. And that does it for announcements. Kind of a light week this week. Let's go ahead and get started with the show. My first interaction with Kevyn was in the summer of 2015 on the second half of the Vertebroken tour with Bermuda, 2x4, and The Prestige. We were just starting part 2 of the run and we're heading down to Indianapolis, Indiana to the Hoosier Dome. I had listened to 2x4's record 1952 for the last week and was thoroughly stoked to hear these guys live. Needless to say, they did not disappoint. Musically, they were one of the tightest bands I've ever heard live for the genre, and Kevyn was an absolute monster on vocals. As it is with any first day of tour, things can be a little hectic. Introductions were brief from everyone. End of the night, I made my rounds with the package and I went over to Kevyn to tell him I enjoyed the set. I was very surprised to see that a vocalist that monstrous on stage was actually a reserved, level-headed kind of guy, which can be a rarity. It was to our surprise shortly after the run that Kevyn had left 2x4. I still kept tabs on him because we had talked about some of the other bands that he was involved with as a drummer. I've had the chance to share the stage with him twice with one of those bands, Sledge. But there's definitely more to the story than just my interactions with him. So here's my conversation with Kevyn Reece. Kevyn, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me.
When did you first get involved with music?
Got my first drum set when I was like 16, I think. So that was probably like 2004, 2005. Tried to start some bands, had some really terrible bands. Really early on.
Were you a band nerd by chance?
No, I was never in band until I went to college, and I tried to pursue like a music degree, but that didn't last that long.
Same boat. I went into college as like a percussion guy because that's where my beginnings. Oh, yeah. That's where my beginnings are at, and it was like cool. Like I'm glad I learned the stuff that I did, but at the same time, it's like, man, when am I ever going to need this stuff for what like we're actually doing? You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's exactly how I felt. Like, that's not how I wanted to pursue music at all. I didn't want to be like a concert performer or like a teacher might be cool, but I wasn't like that about it at all.
Who were some of your early influences?
Every Time I Die, one of the first heavy bands I ever heard, and I still consider them my favorite band. My brother showed them to me when I was like 16, and I was like, this is sick. I love this a lot. And then early on, like Under Oath, Aaron Gillespie, like his drumming, like really looked up to him a lot, and he's a great drummer. If
you had to pick one record that changed everything for you, what would it be?
I would say Counterparts, The Current Will Carry Us. Like drumming wise, that album is just, it's flawless, like front to back, and it's just like that drummer is like so interesting to me. And they changed drummers from that drummer to the next album, which I still love the next album a lot. But like that one like really got it started for me, I guess.
All right, so let's talk about some of your early bands.
Like my first couple bands, like were nothing, just kind of played a couple local shows. Then I was in a band called Left in Memory, probably 2008. Yeah, we were just like basically an As Blood Runs Black like cover band.
All right.
Like, uh, I mean, we weren't, but that's what we sounded like. But that's what we were going for. We all loved As Blood Runs Black, that Allegiance album. Like that was like a nonstop listen for us. And then like Velamaya really influenced us. Started to think outside of the box a little bit, I guess. But we were not a good band at all.
When I went back and listened to some of my older projects and whatnot, isn't it funny when like you'll hear stuff and be like, boy, this is totally 2008, or
Yeah.
like this is totally 2010 or 2012, you know? And
Yeah.
at the time, As Blood Runs Black was huge. Like that
Right.
that record was just, you know, if you didn't know about that record, you sucked.
Right.
You know what I
Right.
mean? So
The thing, yeah, that thing was like gold. That and like Impending Doom.
oh yeah.
We really liked Impending Doom.
Speaking of Impending Doom, one of my bands from 2007, I think it was, we played some really probably total scam show where it was like, all right, we're playing the biggest venue out in Pontiac, Michigan, and whoever sells the most tickets gets the best slot and all that kind of stuff. And so it's end of the night, and I still don't know if they were there or if it was just someone that was handing stuff out, but someone handed out like this almost postcard kind of thing, and it had a bunch of weird writing on it, and it was like, what is this? And I didn't think much of it. It wouldn't be until like maybe 5, 6, maybe even 7 years later, I'm rummaging through some stuff, and I found that postcard thing, and I was like, man, this is a blast from the past. And it was advertising Impending Doom's like first release.
Whoa.
And it was just like, are you kidding me right now?
That's
like,
sick.
This has literally been collecting dust. And at the time, I
Yeah.
was like, who is this? Some band with a
Right,
really
right.
weird logo. I bet they sound, you know, like garbage.
Right.
You know, just funny. All right, go ahead and continue on with early bands there.
Then I was in a band called In Honor, and I did vocals for them. It was like my first vocal band that I had. We wanted to kind of sound like a heavier Gideon or something like that. I think was like kind of the goal. We were pretty into Gideon, but like my vocals were like Impending Doom's vocalist. I like Whitechapel, like Phil Bozeman and stuff like that. It worked for a little bit. Like we got a little bit of recognition and did like a couple runs, and it was a fun time. We were all pretty good friends, but it had to stop. Like we couldn't do it anymore. So that was my first like pretty serious band, I would say.
Did you guys have any releases?
Yeah, I think it's still online. Foundations EP. After that, we released a unmixed and unmastered song. After we broke up, we released it.
All right, so how about Valleys?
Valleys is actually before In Honor. Like it started before In Honor. Valleys used to be called a Hav Shalom, which
Okay.
is yeah, I don't even remember what it means. In Honor and Valleys were like Christian bands. It had something to do with that. I don't remember, but yeah, we were like a metalcore band that like we covered like For Today, and we tried to cover As Hell Retreats, but we were just kind of in that realm of like For Today, kind of trying to be As Hell Retreats kind of thing, I guess. And then we switched to Valleys, and we were like a kind of melodic metalcore band. Tried to be kind of counterparty, trying to be 100th. We covered 100th song. We didn't really get that serious for a while. We had like member changes, and then we kind of could get serious. Then we started touring, and we changed our sound again to like a melodic hardcore kind of like early 2000s, trying to be like, you know, have heart verse, go it alone, stuff like that. And that's like the last full length, the newest thing we released, like the full length in that direction is what it was kind of going for. I think it's a fun band. They're still all my really good friends. Like Valleys is just like, they're just a good group of guys. We just got along pretty well, and it was kind of low maintenance. Like we were serious, but we were like pushing it that hard.
Kind of a band on your own terms kind of thing.
Right.
Which is always fun to be in.
Oh, yeah.
So now on to when I met you, which would have been through 2x4. How did that come about?
I knew the guys in 2x4 because we played with each other when I was in Honor. We had them play like in my hometown, Lawton, Oklahoma. I guess kind of kept in touch a little bit. We would play shows together every now and then. And so one tour they had with Adalia, Micah, their vocalist, couldn't go on it for whatever reason. So they asked me to fill in on vocals. And I was like, all right, yeah, I'll definitely do that. Like, that would have been my first like 2-week tour. And in Honor, it was like just like a 3-day run, a 4-day run was like the most I've ever been on. So this would be the longest I've been away, like on tour. So I was like, yeah, I want to do this. So it was a great experience and we had a lot of fun. The drummer left the band and so they wanted me to play drums for them. And so I was like, okay, yeah, I want to do that. So I played drums for them first. Like I played 2 shows with Micah on vocals. And then after that, Micah decided he wanted to pursue tattooing, I think. So I moved to vocals after that. And then we had to fill in drummers for a while. And then we finally got Jaime, like after a couple tours.
So you're on one of the band's releases, and that's 2015's 1952, which still slams to this day. Like,
thank you.
I still listen to that so much, and it's just like, damn, I forgot how good Kevyn is on vocals.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that.
So what was the writing process like for that?
Yeah, that was tough to write about because it was all about my dad and him passing away, and like those experiences through that, I guess, and because he passed away from cancer in 2010.
Sure, I can relate. I lost my dad in 2012, so I totally know what you're getting at with like writing and inspiration for that kind of stuff. It's tough, but at the same time, it's very cathartic in a sense.
Right.
So
yeah, I'm glad I got those feelings out. You know, I'm still proud of it. Like the writing of it, it means a lot to me.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's a huge reason why like that release still stands out to so many people, because you can tell there's a lot of passion behind it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like that is just an absurdly heavy, stupid, just like punchy record, you know?
Yeah. Thank you, man. Thank you so much.
Who did you go through for production?
We went through Josh Schroeder at Random Awesome. He's done like King 810 and For the Fallen Dreams and stuff, Legend.
So obviously I just bragged about it a ton, but how was the response to the record?
I thought it was great. Like I've never like had a release like at that, I guess, level of a band, because I just joined 2x4. I wasn't like, you know, it was like all like surreal because like I felt like we got a good response and a lot of people enjoyed it, and we would like go on tour and people would know the lyrics at random cities, and I've never experienced anything like that. So that was so cool.
I just mentioned on a couple episodes ago about playing this really random, nasty venue in Syracuse, New York. And it was shortly after our record, Use Your Burdens, came out. And that was the first show that kids were screaming the words back at us. And it was like, hell yeah, I'm all about that.
Yeah. Right, yeah, same. It is such a cool feeling.
So shortly after our run with you guys, we found out that you had parted ways with the band. Any closing statements you want to have for 2x4?
I appreciate like the opportunity I had with that band and all the anybody who supported us, liked the music, came out to shows, anything like that. Like really fun time for me. It was like some of the best experiences I had, and I appreciate like members of 2x4 also for giving me that opportunity to, I guess, reach that many people with kind of what my lyrics were about, what I had to say, which was a really cool thing for me.
So on to your current project, Sledge. A lot has happened since you opened for our tour package back in 2016, but let's go ahead and start from the beginning. How did that come about?
Eric, our guitarist, he he was filling in for I Am on a tour they were doing with us in 2x4. And at some point, this is what he says, but I don't remember it, honestly. Like, it's kind
Sure.
of funny. He asked me if I wanted to jam with him sometime once we got back. And I, said yes, apparently, or whatever. But yeah, one day he just messaged me and was just like, hey, you want to jam today? And I was like, okay, come over. Like, and that was kind of what it was. He like sent me a song, and that was Nile, which is on our first release. And I was like, yeah, I definitely want to play this. Like, yeah, this sounds sick. So we kind of worked on that and just kind of started jamming it together after that.
The band has 3 releases. 2016's Disconnect, which was a single. And then also in 2016, you had The Hateful Death. And then 2017's I Feel Life Wearing Into Waste. Solid releases across the board. I really enjoy them.
Thank you.
So let's talk about The Hateful Death first. What was the writing process and influences for that release?
The writing process was just like Eric coming to us with ideas and kind of us just jamming them and placing them together at my house. So Eric like pretty much wrote it, and we just kind of placed it together.
Who did you go through for production?
Colton Jean, he used to live in Oklahoma. We've just known him for a while, and he wanted to do it, so we went with him to record, and then we got it mixed. Disconnect was mixed by Colton and recorded by Colton, but The Hateful Death was recorded by Colton, but mixed and mastered by Jake Scott from Tulsa. He's done a lot of Oklahoma bands. The newest one we recorded with our friend Luis from Tulsa. He's recorded a lot of bands. He's in Peace of Mind. He's the drummer. And then Jake Scott mixed that one too.
And for both releases, how have the responses been?
Pretty good. Pretty great. The Hateful Death, like it was awesome because it was like our first actual, like pretty much our actual release. Because Disconnect was like a single kind of thing, but I felt really good about the Hateful Death release. The response, it was nice. I feel Life Wearing Into Waste has been pretty good too. It's only 2 songs, but I feel like it's still, people received it well. I was worried about people not liking that it was only like a couple songs or something like that.
What's in store for Sledge this year?
We are currently writing. We're trying to do another release this year. So we're in the process of writing right now. We're taking a little break to write and to save up for a van. But we have a couple things scheduled. I think like a run in late March, and then a couple fests. And then after that, I think we're just going to try to hit the road as much as we can.
So let's switch it up and let's talk some gear. What's your setup looking like these days?
It's a Gretsch Catalina Maple. It's a pretty like cheap kit, but it's a good one.
I love those kits, dude. There's just something about those that are just so sick.
Yeah, no, I like it a lot. My pedals are DW 9000s. My snare, it's a 1967 Rogers snare. It's really nice. I love it a lot. I've had it since I was probably 18. Never used another snare. I love it so much, and it still sounds great. For my cymbals, the 23-inch Mino Byzance medium crash, 20-inch Byzance medium crash, a 22-inch Mino Soundcaster Mega Bell for my ride. My hi-hats are K-Custom Dart Series, 14-inch.
Any items on the wish list?
Definitely want to upgrade my kit. To be honest, like the Catalina Maple has been great, but I definitely want to upgrade it. I would like to get a sonar kit, but that's super expensive. I'm thinking I might get like maybe SJC or something. Just something like on the high end.
All right, opinion question. What's a common mistake that you see young or inexperienced players doing with their kits that drives you nuts?
Not having cases. I don't know. I feel like cases are like lifesavers. Like, I know they're expensive, but like, it's totally worth it. Like, you won't have to buy a new kit like or replace a lot of things like as much. You just have cases. I think that's probably the biggest thing.
Yeah, I mean the cost. I mean, you even if they're just soft cases, it's better than nothing. And what is a soft case like for a 5-piece these days? Like $150, somewhere around there. So like, and I can certainly tell you that your drum set to replace the whole thing is not going to cost you $150.
Right.
All right, so let's have a discussion about the Eternal Mile. When was your first tour, and what was the lineup?
I went on a 4-day tour with In Honor. It was us, In Honor, and this band from Kansas City called Dead Ties. They're not a band anymore, but it was a lot of fun. It was just a couple days, you know.
Would you consider that a good, bad, or neutral experience?
Yeah, definitely a good experience. I don't have any bad things to say about that experience, I don't think.
If you had to guess, how many shows do you think you've done to date?
Oh my god. Probably between 200 and 300.
Favorite markets to play in?
South Texas is definitely one of them. As San Antonio, Laredo, McAllen, all great places to play. I feel like not a lot of people play like McAllen or Laredo that much. Colorado Springs is probably my top. Like, they've always been like super good to us and awesome people, and a lot of people come out to shows there.
We had Rafe from Insurgents on, and he also mentioned, Colorado Springs, playing at like the Black Sheep and the Flux Capacitor and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So
yeah, great places to play. The Flux isn't around anymore, but it was such a cool place.
All right, so we've kind of touched on those two right there, but do you have any other favorite venues?
I miss in Odessa, Florida. There was this place called the Goat House.
The Goat House. That was my very first show ever on a tour.
Really?
Yep.
That's awesome, dude. I miss that place. It was so sick. It was so tiny and just a lot of just people packed in and just I don't know. It was such a cool place.
How do you feel about your local venue, the 89th Street Collective?
I love it. It's awesome. Definitely up there in my top favorite venues. Like, Nick is a great owner and he keeps on improving it. It was already great, but he just keeps on improving it. Well kept up. And
I've played there twice, and I played there with the old stage setup and then the new stage setup. So it's like not up against that wall, like on the left-hand side there.
Yeah.
And ever since they moved it to the new spot, it's just like, this is so perfect right now.
Right.
Because before it kind of felt squished and just awkward.
Yeah.
But
and it was like that for a long time, like up to the just kind of squished.
Yeah.
For a very long time.
How about favorite city to have a day off in?
I think one of my favorite days off I had was on a Valleys tour. We were in South Dakota. We went to Mount Rushmore and then around the mountains around it, and the nature around it was like awesome. There was like a lake. We all jumped in and stuff. It was a lot of fun. Nature stuff like on a day off is just relaxing and it's just like really nice.
What would you consider to be the biggest rookie mistake being on tour?
Not bringing a blanket and pillow.
I think I'm going to elaborate on that because I had an issue on the last tour that I did to go along with that, bringing the correct blanket because it was in the middle of summer. So I'm thinking, cool, it's going to be hot and we're going to have the air on most of the time. So like, I want to be comfortable. Well, in my bunk in the van, the overhead, little air spot, I'm the one who stuck with the one that one of the vents has like a missing piece of plastic on it. So even if I want it like closed, I'm still getting a little bit on me. And if everybody else has their vents closed, it's just like, even if I have it closed. So like, I definitely was a little underprepared with that by only having like a single sheet. And it'd be like, man, this sucks right now.
Yeah.
But yeah, totally. That's a great answer. Nobody said that one yet. How about the most underrated tour item to have on hand?
Honestly, I like to drink a lot of water, stay hydrated, and like water bottles, especially if you're doing vocals. That was like my main thing. It's like to not like ruin your voice. So just always have water.
So the staple question for this year has been Warped Tour. Late last year, Kevin Lyman announced that 2018 is the last year for Warped Tour. In regards to why, he says it's the demographic getting older and low ticket sales. What are your thoughts on Warped Tour coming to an end, and is the aging demographic a problem coming for the rest of us?
I think it's pretty sad that they're coming to an end. I know, like, I've enjoyed Warped Tour. Like, I've been to a couple, and they were honestly like really fun. It's just something I thought would be around forever. Honestly, I don't know if the aging. I don't think so. Like, the aging demographic, like young kids are getting into music, and I see that. Like, I don't think that's gonna stop at all.
Guest Stevie James from the band Fallen Captive. They're out of the Cleveland, Ohio area, and he actually is a bartender up at the venue called the Foundry. He was very vocal about being completely fine with Warped Tour being like done, and that he's looking forward to not like struggling to find local bands to play in the summer now.
Oh, okay.
Because everybody's so focused on like, you know, oh, we're going to go to Warped, or like we're going to try to get on Warped, which is all completely fine. Everybody's been trying to do that in some respect. But I think now that it's like, hey, you're not going to have this anymore, what are you going to do to fill that void of like summer shows? And now that you don't have that, I think a lot of these smaller venues are going to thrive again.
I didn't think about that perspective, which that makes sense.
All right, now let's talk about some of the less glamorous moments in your career.
You mean all of them, all the moments?
Do you have any horror stories from the stage?
Yeah. One time I fell off a speaker on my back while doing vocals. I kept going though. Like, I didn't stop for whatever reason. I just kept going. It was pretty funny, but it did not feel good. It was pretty embarrassing. Like,
nice. What band was that with?
In Honor. I've thrown up on stage before, especially with In Honor. I think like have to throw up a lot, like after doing vocals.
Huh.
It's just pretty disgusting.
Yeah. Must have been just like pushing too hard in the wrong spot or something. How about the worst promoter or overall show situation you've been in?
The most recent one, Sledge had a show in Nashville, and there was only one other band on it. It was just us and that band. And then promoter didn't even show up to the show at all. I mean, there was some people there that which were cool. Like, I enjoyed that, but...
Was it at like an actual venue, or was it like a DIY spot?
No, it was at an actual venue.
That's always like the super frustrating part about it.
Yeah.
It's just like, man, why are you even doing business here then?
Right. Exactly.
Lastly, what's one of the most random things to happen on tour? Jaime mentioned a couple things that were pretty funny, but go ahead.
Oh, God. I want to hear Jaime's responses.
So Jaime mentioned one time when you guys were getting ready to pull into like a steak and shake or something like that, and someone cut you guys off, and I think Jason was driving and he had to like slam on the brakes, and Jaime went flying.
Jaime was in the back. He ended up in the front seat.
And then he was just like, how the hell did I get up here?
Yeah. That was, oh, God. Oh, that was so funny.
And then one that I mentioned was when we were in Austin and the tour package like chased that pedicab driver after he like hit the front of the 2x4 van.
I don't remember that.
You were like the dude who chased him for so long.
Really?
You don't remember that?
I don't.
So we were at Dirty Dog in Austin, and that was when the Prestige was leaving.
I remember that. Okay. In Austin. Okay.
Yeah,
I was walking around Austin.
Yeah, we're all in the back there, and for anybody who's played there, you know that the back alley is just so tough. Like, loading in and out there just sucks. Yeah. And to have this pedicab driver complain is like, okay, yeah, I get it. That's an easy access point to, like, go through that alley. But to throw a fit, and I remember he was specifically, like, yelling at you, and you were just complete stonewalling him the whole time, just like, I don't care. It's a loading zone. Yeah. All this kind of stuff. And I remember the thing that really touched him off was when you were just like, well, I guess if you would have asked us nicely, we probably would have moved.
Oh, yeah.
and that's what pissed him off.
Oh, that's awesome.
Oh, man. Do you have any other stories?
I guess one time, 2x4, we were supposed to play in Brooklyn, New York. And we were at the show, and it was a crazy show, like going nuts. So much so that they were like damaging the venue a lot. And before we even got to play, the owner, I don't know, he starts yelling at everyone to get out. He's like this like classic like New York Italian guy, like owner. He's just angry at everyone, starts yelling at the promoter. And then we're like, okay, we got to pack up, whatever. We're getting all our merch torn down and stuff. And the owner and the promoter are just yelling at each other, like like just keep yelling at each other, like top of their lungs. Like we were just like, I'm not listening. I don't know. Like, let's pack up and go. So we didn't get to play, but it was an interesting experience, I guess. Kind of random. I don't know.
All right, so before we wrap this up, I'm curious to hear what kind of advice you'd have for a few groups of people. For starters, what advice would you give to local bands? Not necessarily local to your area, but just in general.
Have to be pretty committed to it, I would say. Like, and if you want to try it, like, do this, like, do it. Like, don't, like, halfway do it. Just, like, be committed, and everything else kind of falls into place after you, like, once you decide you really want to do it. Like,
what advice would you give to promoters?
Don't get in over your head. Do what you know you can do. Commit to know what you know you can do. Don't guarantee, like, things that you are not sure about. Work hard for the bands, because bands are working hard to get to your city. It's a serious thing for bands. It's not, something to be taken lightly.
And lastly, what advice would you give to bands hitting the road for the first time?
Figure out places to stay before you get to the city. Like, otherwise you're going to be sleeping in your van, and no one likes to do that. Make sure you're prepared to tour.
All right, so let's do a plug for Sledge. Where can people find you guys?
We're on Facebook. I think you just put in Sledge or Sledge OK. Our Bandcamp is sledgeok.bandcamp.com. Music on Google Play, Spotify, Apple Music, all Amazon, all that stuff.
Kevyn, thank you so much for being on the show. Really looking forward to seeing where Sledge goes this year. Best of luck moving forward with all that, and hopefully we'll be chatting again soon.
Yeah, thank you, man. This was fun. Thanks for having me on the show.
That concludes this episode. I'd like to thank Kevyn for being on the show. Be sure to check out all the bands mentioned on today's show: In Honor, Valleys, 2x4, and Sledge. Also, don't forget about the two shows mentioned at the beginning of the show: Distinguisher out in Sacramento, and Era presented by Witch Trial in Biloxi. I've been Noah Sias, and as always, thank you for listening.